Miravex curled her three primary appendages around the edge of her console, her chromatophores pulsing with anxiety purple as she studied the readings. "Impossible," she whispered, the word emerging as a harmonic triad from her speaking chambers. The vessel simply shouldn't exist. Not here, not now, and certainly not with those design specifications. Every Council species had followed the same technological progression path for spacefaring vessels: streamlined exteriors, concealed weapon arrays, and gravitational propulsion systems. This ship violated all established engineering principles with its exposed heat sinks, visible weapon ports, and what appeared to be actual fusion exhaust. "Senior Officer Vex, do you need assistance?" The station's Central Intelligence asked, its perfect harmonics indicating artificial origin. "Notify High Command immediately," she said, her speaking chambers tightening with stress. Priority 1. Unknown configuration vessel has penetrated defensive grid Echo 7. The ship's design was oddly primitive. Asymmetric angles, exposed communications arrays, and visible repair patches along the hull plating. Yet something about it triggered a primal warning system, deep in Miravex's evolutionary memory. This vessel was built for war. The communications display chimed. The unknown ship was responding to the automated greeting. The visual formed in the projection field: a bipedal creature with exposed facial features and a covering of artificial material in dark blue displaying symbolic markings. Behind it, more similar creatures moved with purpose across what appeared to be a command center. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the United Nations Space Command Vessel Vanguard. We come representing Earth." The creature, human, according to its self-identification, spoke with clear precision in perfect standard Galactic, despite this being first contact. The implication sent Miravex's secondary heart into accelerated rhythm. "Vanguard, this is Senior Detection Officer Miravex of Galactic Council Outpost Epsilon 9. Your presence is unexpected. Please maintain position for diplomatic contact." Captain Ray's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Amusement, perhaps. "We'll hold position, Officer Vex. We look forward to establishing formal relations." When the communication ended, Miravex immediately ordered a full spectrum analysis of the transmission. The results were troubling. Background conversations among the human crew contained references to Council protocols that were classified. One visible display showed Council patrol routes with timestamps. Most disturbing was a momentary glimpse of what appeared to be a tactical overlay of Council space, with key defensive positions marked. High Command responded within minutes. A diplomatic vessel was being dispatched, but with a military escort maintaining stealth protocols. Miravex was ordered to continue communications and gather intelligence without revealing suspicions. 3 hours later, she watched the diplomatic shuttle dock with the human vessel. The humans had eagerly provided schematics for compatible docking procedures. Another impossibility for a first contact scenario. As senior diplomat Zaxvora led the delegation aboard the Vanguard, Miravex studied the human ship once more. The name Vanguard had been translated as Forward Scout in her language. An appropriate designation, she realized with growing unease. This wasn't a chance encounter. The humans hadn't stumbled into Council space. They were an advance force, and judging by their vessel's design, the humans were expecting combat, not combat. The airlock cycled with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Zaxvora's respiratory filters adjusted automatically as traces of unfamiliar compounds registered. Nitrogen-heavy atmosphere with curious organic particulates that his sensors classified as non-toxic but unidentified. Behind him, the scientific delegation's membranes fluttered with nervous anticipation. "Welcome aboard the Vanguard," Captain Rice said, extending a 5-digited appendage. "We observe the custom of handshaking among diplomatic contacts." Zaxvora extended his primary manipulator, surprised when the human grasped it firmly. The gesture was oddly intimate by Council standards. Direct physical contact between different species was typically reserved for emergency medical intervention, not greetings. Your knowledge of our language is unexpected, Zaxvora said, following the captain down a corridor that thrummed with mechanical vibrations. Unlike council vessels with their sound-dampening fields, the Vanguard seemed alive with noise. The murmur of machinery, footsteps on metal grating, voices calling through communication systems. We believe in thorough preparation, Rise replied with what Zaxvora would later learn was a smile. Your automated beacons have been broadcasting linguistic packages for centuries, a practical approach to first contact. The beacons were deployed at the very edge of council space. For humans to have intercepted those signals meant they had been listening well beyond their system. Zaxvora filed this information carefully. The delegation was led to a meeting chamber where refreshments had been arranged. Dr. Kelsey, the xenobiologist, discreetly scanned the offered substances. These are remarkably compatible with various council physiologies, she whispered to Zaxvora in their native harmonic speech. Captain Reyes gestured to a display showing the Vanguard specifications, with notable omissions that even Zaxvora, no military expert, could identify. Our vessel is primarily exploratory, she explained, the statement contradicted by the weapons systems visible through the viewport behind her. Though we maintain defensive capabilities. A human crew member entered, nodding to Captain Reyes before handing her a datapad. Zaxvora noticed a holstered object at the human's side, unmistakably a weapon. More concerning was the casual way it was carried, like an expected accessory rather than an emergency tool. Is armed presence standard during diplomatic meetings? Zaxvora asked carefully. Commander Jacobs is my executive officer, Reyes replied smoothly. All bridge officers maintain standard equipment while on duty. A precaution, nothing more. The subtle emphasis on standard implied something disturbing, that humans normalized constant readiness for conflict. During the facility tour, Dr. Kelsey paused at a display showing environmental tolerances. She beckoned Zaxvora over, her pigmentation paling to concerned white. These readings, the humans can function in temperature ranges that would kill most council species. Their radiation resistance is particularly troubling. Zaxvora observed a group of crew members eating in what Reyes called a mess hall. Their teeth displayed prominent cusps for tearing, alongside flatter surfaces for grinding. The unmistakable dentition of an omnivorous predator species. One crew member casually mentioned pulling a double shift, describing a work period that would exceed the safe consciousness limits for most council species. When Reyes led them to the bridge, Zaxvora finally understood why the council's initial scans had classified the Vanguard as a warship. Every station, every system was designed with redundancy. The navigation officer monitored escape vectors while plotting course. The communications specialist simultaneously scanned all frequencies. Even the ship's interior architecture emphasized defensible positions and multiple access routes. This wasn't merely a vessel equipped for combat. This was a species that integrated warfare into its fundamental approach to space exploration. Dr. Tuleth's laboratory deep within the council archives was silent except for the soft hum of preservation fields and the occasional click of his manipulators against ancient storage devices. His species had evolved in darkness, and he preferred to work with minimal illumination, just enough to read the glyphs that scrolled across his displays. The precursor texts were fragmentary, preserved in crystalline structures that had survived the civilization's mysterious disappearance 50 millennia ago. Most council archaeologists dismissed them as historical curiosities, but Tuleth had dedicated his extended lifespan to their study. Now, as reports of the human vessel circulated through council networks, he recalled a particular fragment that had never fit established translation protocols. Search pattern: bipedal endurance predators, third orbital position, extreme environmental adaptation. He instructed the archive system. The results appeared instantly. 7 previously cataloged fragments containing symbols that previous translators had interpreted as warnings. Tuleth adjusted his optical enhancers and began a fresh analysis, applying linguistic algorithms he had developed specifically for precursor conceptual structures. The first fragment's new translation flickered onto his display. The adaptive species demonstrates unexpected problem-solving when environmental conditions are modified beyond tolerable parameters. Unlike specialized evolution paths, they employ cooperative strategies and tool modification. Observation continues. Not a warning. A research note. The second fragment proved even more revealing. Primary subjects display remarkable capacity for threat recognition. When presented with superior force, they do not submit as expected, but instead develop countermeasures through technological adaptation. Their cognitive process applies learning from unrelated fields to military applications with unprecedented speed. Tleth's respiratory chambers constricted with mounting excitement as he correlated the fragments. The precursors hadn't quarantined humanity out of fear. They had established an observation boundary around Earth to study human development without interference. Meanwhile, aboard the Vanguard, Lieutenant Commander Jacobs hunched over his secure terminal in the ship's intelligence center. The Council delegation had departed hours ago, but their visit had provided valuable data, particularly the quantum signatures of their communication devices, which now allowed selective access to their information networks. "Captain, you need to see this," he said when Reyes entered the compartment. The display showed Council communication channels suddenly flooding with queries about Earth's coordinates. More concerning were the military transmissions being exchanged between Council vessels. Their positioning for containment. Jacobs pointed to a tactical projection. These movements align with standard Council interdiction protocols we observed in the Proxima intercepts. Captain Reyes studied the pattern, her expression hardening. Time estimate. Based on current deployment trajectories, they'll have sufficient forces assembled within 12 hours. Reyes activated her secure communication implant. Bridge, initiate contingency protocol Sierra 9. Communications, prepare the data package for transmission to Earth Command. She turned back to Jacobs. What about our guest? Dr. Tleth's archive credentials are proving useful. He's accessing files even our best infiltration programs couldn't reach. Jacobs brought up a new display showing the archaeologist's current queries. He's reviewing ancient records about Earth. Reyes watched the translated fragments appear on Tleth's screen, her eyes narrowing at the implications. The precursors were studying us, she said softly, and the Council has misinterpreted their research as warnings for 50,000 years. Which explains their reaction to our arrival, Jacobs added. They think they're facing a quarantine threat, not a potential ally. Reyes straightened. Decision made. Prepare the response protocols. If they're expecting monsters, we'll show them exactly how dangerous humanity can be when provoked, and exactly how reasonable we are when respected. The diplomatic reception aboard the Council flagship Eternal Harmony glittered with artificial opulence. Crystalline structures captured and refracted light in patterns designed to please the visual sensory organs of all 17 Council species. Atmospheric composition shifted subtly throughout the chamber, creating pockets of comfort for different biological requirements. Captain Reyes and her small delegation moved through the gathering with practiced ease. Their environmental suits, explained away as medical necessity for atmospheric adaptation, concealed more than just breathing apparatus. Each suit contained sensor arrays, communication scramblers, and defensive countermeasures that Council scanners registered as harmless medical equipment. You must try the fermented nectar of the Centauri Gardens, a high-ranking Melbury official insisted, extending a ceremonial vessel toward Commander Jacobs, a tradition among new allies. Jacobs smiled politely, his helmet analyzing the liquid's contents in microseconds. The display inside his visor flashed warning symbols. The beverage contained compounds that would be severely debilitating to human physiology. Our medical protocols restrict consumption of non-Earth substances without prior testing, he explained smoothly, but we appreciate the gesture. The Melbury's facial appendages twitched with what might have been disappointment. Later, as the reception wound down, The human delegation was escorted to their quarters in a separate section of the massive vessel. The compartments were luxurious by Council standards, and completely isolated from the main environmental systems. Captain Rice conducted a final briefing before her team retired. Surveillance is certain. Maintain suit integrity at all times. Communications blackout except for emergency protocols. Her expression was grim. The Council military faction is pushing for containment options. We need to buy time for Earth to receive our data package. 3 hours into the designated rest period, the attack came. The environmental systems in the human quarters suddenly flooded the chambers with a paralytic gas mixture used for sedating large predator species. Simultaneously, the artificial gravity increased to twice Earth standard, enough to incapacitate most species, but merely uncomfortable for humans conditioned by shipboard gravity training. Commander Jacobs was first to react, his suit sensors detecting the changes before the gas became visible. Hostiles incoming. Captain Rice slammed her reinforced glove against the emergency release panel beside the supposedly impenetrable viewport, the panel's location noted during her earlier inspection of the quarters. The transparent material, designed to withstand vacuum exposure, shattered under the precisely applied force of her exoskeletal suit enhancements. Alarms blared as the squad moved with coordinated precision. Lieutenant Zhao interfaced with a Council terminal, her neural implants processing alien code structures at superhuman speed. Within seconds, she had identified the command pathways for local security systems. "Captain, I have access to their defensive grid," she reported. "Council security forces converging from 3 directions. Implement Protocol Omega," Rice ordered. "Communications, status on the Vanguard. Council vessels moving to intercept, Captain." Communications Officer Park confirmed. "They've activated weapons systems under pretense of standard quarantine procedures." Rice nodded grimly. "Execute the contingency." Aboard the Vanguard, the ship's systems came fully online as automated protocols recognized the emergency signal. Shield configurations shifted to patterns specifically designed to counter Council weapon signatures. Point defense systems targeted the approaching vessels with precision the Council tactical officers would later describe as unnervingly predictable, as if the humans had studied Council attack formations for years. The engagement lasted precisely 3 minutes and 17 seconds. 3 Council vessels disabled, their propulsion and weapons systems surgically neutralized, while life support remained untouched. As the Vanguard disappeared into FTL using a propulsion configuration deemed theoretically impossible by Council scientists, it left behind a simple automated beacon broadcasting in all Council languages. "You started this. We'll finish it." The Council chambers had never witnessed such disorder in its 12,000 years of governance. Representatives of 17 advanced civilizations, species that prided themselves on rationality and measured discourse, were now shouting over one another in a cacophony of untranslatable expressions. High Commander Vex Nera stood stoically before the central projection, her pale exoskeleton reflecting the harsh light of the tactical displays. The damage assessment from the encounter with the Vanguard scrolled in multiple languages beside her. 3 vessels disabled with surgical precision, she stated when the chamber finally quieted. "No casualties. Every shot targeted non-essential systems." The Braxi representative, a massive silicon-based entity, rumbled with deep harmonic disapproval. "They attacked Council vessels. After we attempted to neutralize their delegation and contain their ship using military protocols designed for Class 1 biological threats," Diplomat Zaxvora interjected, his voice carrying the formal tones of official protest. "An action taken without full Council approval." The tactical display shifted to show the Vanguard's weapon impacts, each precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy. Their response was restrained, Vex Nera admitted reluctantly. "Our analysis indicates their weapon systems were capable of far more destructive potential than was deployed." The implications hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud. The humans had held back. "There is more," Zaxvora continued, stepping to the central platform. My conversations with Captain Rice revealed troubling insights into human psychology. They evolved as persistence predators who would track prey across vast distances, developing extraordinary pattern recognition and strategic thinking. He gestured, and the display changed to show Earth, a startlingly diverse planet with extreme environmental variations. Humans adapted to survive in deserts, Arctic regions, high mountains, and deep oceans. They can endure physical conditions that would kill most council species. More importantly, they evolved expecting threats. Surveillance footage appeared showing humans performing routine tasks aboard the Vanguard, maintenance crews working in vacuum conditions with minimal protection, security personnel training in simulated gravity fluctuations, bridge officers calmly responding to crisis scenarios. This is not military training, Zaxfora explained. This is their baseline existence. Humans prepare for disaster as a cultural imperative. The Melberry representative's appendages twitched nervously. The threat assessment was justified. These creatures are dangerous. They are dangerous because we made them so, countered Zaxfora. Our intelligence division has completed analysis of Earth's communication networks. For decades, humans have been intercepting our transmissions, studying potential threats. They developed technologies specifically designed to counter our advantages. He paused, letting the revelation sink in. They knew about us long before we discovered them. The Vanguard's appearance was not accidental. The chamber erupted again, but fell silent when a new figure entered, Dr. Teleth, his ancient frame supported by a mobility field. The archaeologist's presence at a security council was unprecedented. The precursor archives contain extensive observations of early humans, he announced, his voice wavering with age. I have completed new translations of their research notes. They were not warnings, as previously interpreted, but studies of human adaptability under pressure. He activated his own data stream, showing the corrected translations. The precursors were not containing a threat. They were observing a species that exhibited problem-solving capabilities unlike any they had encountered. The capacity to innovate when facing superior opposition. The council chambers grew deathly quiet as the implications became clear. They had not discovered humans by chance. The humans had been watching, learning, and preparing for this encounter, and the council's first response had confirmed their worst expectations. They allowed us to find them, Zaxfora said softly. The question now is why. 6 months after the Vanguard incident, routine shifted to chaos across council space. Detection grids at 17 strategic locations simultaneously registered energy anomalies unlike anything previously documented. Council military vessels moved to intercept, only to find themselves facing an assembled human fleet that materialized with synchronized precision. The ships were clearly built for war, yet incorporated elements of Council design philosophies, adapted and modified in ways that suggested intimate knowledge of Council weaknesses. Most concerning was their formation, a perfect counter to standard Council defensive postures. Admiral Wei Chen stood on the bridge of the UNSC Retribution, her uniform bearing the simple insignia of Earth's United Military Command. The massive view screen before her showed the positions of all Council vessels within sensor range. Broadcast on all frequencies, she ordered, her voice calm despite the historical weight of the moment. Include translation packages for all 17 Council languages. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Chen's message was transmitted simultaneously to every Council world, vessel, and outpost. This is Admiral Wei Chen of the United Nations Space Command. 6 months ago, your representatives conducted an unprovoked attack against our vessel during a diplomatic mission. Under Earth's unified protocol, this constitutes an act of war. She paused, allowing translation systems time to process. However, we recognize the actions of a few don't represent the will of many. Earth proposes negotiation with the following conditions. The conditions appeared on Council screens: specific security protocols, diplomatic frameworks, and technological safeguards. Most troublingly, the list included the immediate dismissal of military officials who had authorized the attack on the Vanguard, officials whose involvement had never been made public. In the Council emergency session, panic spread as representatives realized the implications. The humans knew their internal power structures, their classified decision-making processes, even the identities of covert operators. How could they possibly know this? Demanded the Braxy representative, crystalline appendages vibrating with stress frequencies. Zaxvora, recently appointed as emergency liaison to human diplomatic channels, reviewed the technical assessment of the human fleet. Their vessels incorporate design elements that would require intimate understanding of our technology, he noted. Not merely observation, but comprehension of theoretical principles. The Council's premier military strategist, General Cav, delivered the most disturbing analysis. Their deployment pattern anticipates our standard response with 97% accuracy. We cannot match their current capabilities despite our supposed technological superiority. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Chen reviewed the Council's internal communications, intercepted and decoded in real time by systems designed specifically for this purpose. They're debating whether to attempt another strike, reported Intelligence Officer Rodriguez. Military faction pushing for immediate action. Diplomatic faction advocating caution. Chen nodded. Predictable. Activate contingency delta. Throughout Council space, previously dormant human intelligence nodes activated, revealing surveillance capabilities that had been embedded in Council systems for years. Strategic information began flowing directly to human command channels, defense algorithms, weapons specifications, biological data. This isn't an invasion, Chen explained to her senior staff. This is a demonstration. On her private terminal, she reviewed the true objective. Dr. Tileth's complete translation of the precursor archives, still unknown to most of the Council. The ancient civilization's fascination with human cognitive adaptability was evident throughout their research notes. The Council misunderstood us because they evolved along different paths, Chen said to her executive officer. Species that developed in stable environments with predictable threats cannot comprehend a species that evolved expecting the unexpected. The tactical display updated, showing Council vessels adjusting their positions, not to attack, but to create distance. The first psychological victory was achieved. Now came the moment that would determine whether this would end in alliance or annihilation. The neutral territory chosen for negotiations was itself a calculated message, an ancient space station of precursor design that orbited a stellar remnant at the boundaries of Council space. For millennia, the structure had been designated as a scientific research outpost, its original purpose lost to time. Human and Council delegations arrived simultaneously, their vessels maintaining respectful distances as shuttlecraft transported representatives to the station's central chamber. The architecture was disconcerting to both groups. Curved surfaces that defied conventional engineering, materials that absorbed and redirected light in subtle patterns, and gravity that shifted imperceptibly as one moved through the space. Admiral Chen led the human delegation, flanked by Captain Reyes and a team of specialists chosen specifically for their expertise in Council biology, psychology, and technology. Across the chamber, a mixed delegation of Council representatives arranged themselves according to their complex hierarchy. Welcome to the first official diplomatic summit between Earth and the Galactic Council, Chen began, her words echoing in the perfect acoustics of the ancient chamber. The lead Council diplomat, a Melberry of distinguished lineage, began the formal response, only to stop abruptly as environmental alarms activated throughout the station. Warning indicators flashed across information displays, showing atmospheric contamination spreading through ventilation systems. Biological agent detected, announced the station's automated systems, initiating containment protocols. Council representatives reacted with predictable panic, their evacuation hampered by suddenly sealed access points. Their confusion increased when they noticed the human delegation calmly donning protective gear that had appeared from concealed compartments in their formal attire. You knew, accused the Melbari diplomat, facial appendages contorting with realization. This was your attack. Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive behind her transparent mask. Not our attack. A Council Black Operations team deployed a targeted pathogen designed to affect human neural systems while leaving Council species unharmed. She gestured, and holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing surveillance footage of the infiltration team, all wearing Council military identifiers. We predicted this attempt with 94% certainty, Chen continued. The atmospheric filtration was modified to isolate and contain the agent. The Council security chief, a Vraxian known for uncompromising tactics, stepped forward. Impossible. This operation was planned using isolated systems with no digital footprint. We didn't need to hack your systems, Captain Rice explained. We've had agents within Council space for years. Some allies who shared our concerns about militant factions. Some infiltrators placed in strategic positions. The revelation sent visible shock through the Council delegation. Species that had believed themselves unmistakably distinct from humans learned that their societies had been penetrated at the highest levels. Before accusations could escalate, a new figure entered from a side chamber, Dr. Taleth, accompanied by his human counterpart, Dr. Samira Patel. Between them, they carried an ancient crystalline storage device of obvious precursor origin. The true purpose of this station has been misunderstood for millennia, Dr. Patel announced. It was not merely a research outpost. It was an observation post focused specifically on Earth. Dr. Taleth activated the device, projecting images that filled the chamber, precursor visitors throughout human history, observing from concealment as early humans developed tools, mastered fire, created art, and eventually built civilizations. The precursors didn't fear humans, Dr. Patel continued. They were studying us. What they found most remarkable was our cognitive adaptability under pressure, our ability to transform disadvantages into advantages through creative thinking. The ancient recordings showed human communities responding to disasters, adapting to climate changes, overcoming resource limitations through innovation. The supposed quarantine was a research boundary, Dr. Taleth explained, his voice carrying the weight of revelation. The Council species, with your specialized evolutionary paths, misinterpreted their research notes through your own limited perspectives. The chamber fell silent as the implications resonated through both delegations. Humanity had never been contained as a threat. They had been observed as a phenomenon unique in galactic history. 1 year after the Vanguard's initial appearance in Council space, the newly constructed UNSC diplomatic vessel, Horizon, docked with the Central Council station. Unlike the utilitarian warships that had characterized humanity's introduction to galactic society, the Horizon featured an elegant design that incorporated architectural elements from all 17 Council species, plus distinctive human aesthetics that emphasized function alongside form. The Council chamber, once a place of discord following the human revelation, now hosted a historic ceremony. Representatives of all Council species gathered in concentric rings according to tradition, with one significant modification. A new position had been added to the inner circle. Ambassador Elena Reyes, formerly captain of the Vanguard, stood beside Zach Svora as they approached the central platform. Behind them walked Admiral Chen and the reformed Council security leadership, their joint presence symbolizing the unprecedented security cooperation that had developed since the truth emerged. The Intergalactic Cooperation Treaty represents more than peace between our civilizations, Rise addressed the assembly, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. It acknowledges that diversity of evolutionary paths creates strength when combined with mutual respect. The treaty itself was displayed on crystalline tablets, a council tradition, but the content reflected a new understanding. Human military strategists now worked alongside Council defense forces, their perspective revealing blind spots in security protocols that had existed for centuries. The human concept of red team analysis has transformed our approach to galactic security, noted General Cav, once a vocal opponent of human integration. They excel at identifying patterns across different fields of knowledge, connecting separate disciplines in ways specialist evolved council members never considered. Throughout council space, the impact of human thinking was already evident. Medical researchers incorporated human adaptability principles into treatments for previously intractable conditions. Engineering teams redesigned critical systems with redundancy approaches inspired by human spacecraft. Even cultural exchanges flourished as council species discovered human art, music, and literature. Expressions of a species that had evolved expecting adversity and finding beauty within it. In the station's strategic command center, Dr. Tileth and Dr. Pedal continued their joint translation project, recovering more precursor knowledge with each passing day. The ancient civilization's observations of early humans had led them to a profound conclusion, recorded in their final entries before their mysterious disappearance. The adaptive cognition of the developing species suggests evolutionary paths we had not contemplated. Their approach to problem-solving may hold answers to questions we have not yet thought to ask. At the station's primary docking ring, the original Vanguard, restored and upgraded with a combination of human ingenuity and council technology, prepared for its new mission. The vessel that had once appeared as a suspicious warship now embarked as the flagship of a joint exploration initiative, its mixed human council crew representative of the new alliance. In the ship's observation deck, Ambassador Reyes and Zach Svora watched as final preparations were completed. "You know what made humans different?" Reyes asked, gazing at the stars beyond the viewport. "Your capacity for violence," Zach Svora suggested with what Reyes now recognized as Melberry humor. She smiled. "Our capacity for imagination. We never assumed we were the strongest species in the galaxy. We always prepared for something bigger than ourselves." Zach Svora contemplated this as tactical displays showed unknown signals beyond charted space, potential threats no single species could face alone. "Perhaps that is why the precursors found you so fascinating," he observed. "You evolved expecting the worst and hoping for the best," Reyes added, watching as the Vanguard's engines initialized. The suspicious human warship that had once terrified the Council now led a united fleet toward the unknown, carrying with it the combined strength of 18 distinct evolutionary paths, each with its own perspective, all focused on a shared future among the stars.